Police say the murder on Saturday involved this home along Skylake Road in Damascus Township, just outside of Honesdale. It's here where 10-year-old Tristan Carilla was. Now he's charged with criminal homicide. That happened last night. The 10-year-old is charged as an adult for the death of 90-year-old Helen Novak.
Well, it seems the people going through the prison system are getting younger every year. So how should the juvenile offenders be treated? Should they be separate from the general population or be thrown to the wolves where real hardened criminals thrive on the yard? Pleasure to welcome back to Midpoint. I'm Rick Blackwell, and career trial attorney, one of our legal experts, joins us right here on Midpoint. It's Wendy Patrick. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Let's talk about the treatment of child criminals. How has it changed over the years?
Well, it's changed an enormous amount over the years. It remains contentious. There are very strong opinions on both sides regarding what we should do with children who kill. But it's changed over the years in that there's no longer this rush to judgment that's characterized some cases that have gotten a lot of news media attention lately, overturning trials that judges now see as unfair because they just moved too quickly. In other words, there weren't enough facts and circumstances regarding the alleged crime taken into consideration. And we just can't do that. That wouldn't afford due process. So we really move a lot slowly, a lot more slowly nowadays, and we look at a lot more factors that precipitated these crimes.
Are we seeing more kids in the general population actually mixing with adults? And just how common is that across the country?
It determines on whether or not the child is charged as a juvenile or as an adult. So we call it direct filing when we actually charge a child as an adult from the beginning. And there's a lot of factors that go into why prosecutors do that. They have to look at, first of all, the nature of the conduct, the age of the child. Does the child know right from wrong? There are so many things that go into that decision, but that is the decision that governs how, in most cases, the child will be housed. And, we're not going to simply, charge every juvenile as an adult. And on the other hand, like you mentioned earlier, there are valid concerns with separation if, in fact, some children do get charged and are being treated in adult court.
Is it bad for the public to get involved in these kind of cases? The outcry will go one way or another way, and in many cases, this could determine what kind of prosecution that child will face, correct?
Pretrial publicity is one of the things that really plagues both sides in a criminal case around the globe. And it's exactly what you mentioned. The court of public opinion is not a court of law, yet the sentiments expressed are viewed by the jury pool. And sometimes people, without knowing enough about the facts of the case, sound off on Twitter, where we all know lots of people go for their news, and it really sort of taints a community from which a jury is going to have to be selected. So these are enormous issues that are only made more complicated by the ease with which we can view social media.
Wendy Patrick's joining us right here on Midpoint. Wendy, do we have any research in as far as these kids that come out of the system? Maybe they are mixed in with the adult population at 16 and 17 years old. Do they come out any more hardened as a result of being with the general population?
Many kids are rehabilitated, many adults are rehabilitated. But you're right on the money when you suggest that then there are some cases where people are incarcerated with others from whom they learn how to pick a lock or carjack a victim. And it's hard to prevent that sort of thing in adult prisons. But we're talking about young people. It's doesn't just end at 18. That kind of influence, we worry about that regardless of who's housed together. But in terms of being impressionistic, certainly we worry about that. But we also worry about that on the schoolyard, don't we? It's not just in our correctional facilities that young people are influenced and lured off the right path.
Wendy, your answer really kind of troubles me from the standpoint you mentioned it's nothing new. We seem to be making these same mistakes over and over again with juveniles and their involvement in crime. What can we do differently? What is something outside the box maybe certain states or municipalities are doing to really try to turn the tide on some of these troubling statistics?
There's an enormous amount of effort, and this is a very heartening fact, a real high point, if you will, in juvenile crime is there's an enormous effort, more and more every day, to get involved early, to be proactive in pairing young people with role models, mentors, teachers, friends, parenting. I mean, there's so much effort being poured into this, partially because our heart breaks every time we read about another 10-year-old boy killing somebody, or 12-year-olds killing each other. I mean, there's a new case almost every day in the news. But it really has, because these cases are so sensational and are so publicized, it really does spur us to even further action on the prevention standpoint, to try to become involved in the lives of young people sooner rather than later, to prevent one more victim.
Public Broadcasting did a good segment recently. They were talking about juveniles and the amount of time that they spend in solitary confinement. Are we seeing more and more of that? I mean, in some cases, these kids were spending 23 out of 24 hours all by themselves in a 6-foot by 8-foot cage. Are we seeing that across the country?
You know, solitary confinement is one of the cruelest forms of punishment, according to some who have had to endure it. As far as statistics, you know, there's lots of different statistics regarding who is or isn't in solitary confinement. But I want to caution viewers that sometimes that word is used not to mean kept in isolation 23 hours out of the day, but kept away from the adult population. So terminology sometimes is very tricky. And again, you know, sometimes well-meaning reporters misuse this term solitary. So you're absolutely right. You really have to look behind the scenes to figure out what exactly do those statistics say, because we already know that sometimes kids are housed separately, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're housed in solitary confinement.
One of the big arguments, really, is it difficult to discern between competency and insanity in children. It's so tough for jurors, for judges, for attorneys. Where do you fall on this, Wendy?
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of misperception as to what the two terms mean. Competency means, are you competent to be able to assist in your own defense? Do you understand what's going on at the trial? Do you know who's who, what the prosecutor does, what the judge does? Insanity is, did you know whether or not your actions were right or wrong? There can be a trial on both. First, to determine competency. That's going on right now in the Slender Man trial that we're hearing a lot about. The 12-year-old girls that killed, they're charged with attempted murder, trying to kill a classmate. So competency comes first. And if in fact the defendants are found to be competent, then insanity is something else that could be alleged down the line. So these are, both of which are very important, but these are two separate facets of a criminal trial, including juveniles.
All right, Wendy Patrick is joining us. And Wendy, I know this is such a difficult issue. So often we want these young men and women, I mean, we're a nation that believes in second chances, right? And we want these young men and women, if they're in the system, to get out of the system, to rehabilitate themselves, make something of their lives, get the education that they need, and to move on and to be productive citizens. And Wendy, you framed the issue for us so fantastic. We appreciate you being on Midpoint today. Thank you so much. Have a great start to your new year. Thanks again, Wendy.
Same to you. Thank
Wendy
you.
Patrick joining us right here on Midpoint. I'm Rick Blackwell. We're coming right back.
Thousands of people gather at a church in Queens to pay their respects to fallen police officer Rafael Ramos. I'm Morgan Thompson, and this story tops your Newsmax Now update. Ramos was one of 2 officers killed during an ambush in Brooklyn last week. Funeral arrangements for his partner, Win-Jin Liu, are still being worked out. And now, JetBlue is offering to fly 2 police officers from every department in the country to New York for free. The airline says it wants to help officers support their fallen colleagues. South Carolina's first Republican governor dies at the age of 87 today. James V. Edwards is credited with helping build the modern Republican Party in that state. He also served as Energy Secretary under President Ronald Reagan. And a nasty winter storm could spell trouble for people in the Rockies all the way to the Midwest. Denver already has a foot of snow. I'm Morgan Thompson. We'll have another Newsmax Now update coming your way at the top of the hour.